Welcome, Dr. Shefali. I am so excited to get to ask you questions about your book that I just finished reading yesterday.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting this new book. Yes, it's coming out this week, so I'm really excited that your audience will hear a little bit about it.
Amazing. So I wanted to start out with a sort of a more personal question. I really want to know what your why is behind this book. Like, what drives you to do this work?
Oh, in general, in the big picture. Well, I'm a clinical psychologist, so I see people suffering, and it bothers me because many times the answer is simple. They are just confused and disconnected from their own inner power. And I want to help people lessen their suffering. So on a macro scale, that's my answer. And then on a very specific, detailed level, I write parenting books because I see how so much of adult problems and adult dysfunction stem from not being seen by mom, not being heard by dad, not being validated in the home. And if only we parents can do it just 10% better, the ripple effect is huge. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. But if you use the tools that I give you in this book, it will stave off so much dysfunction. It will help your children have so much more of a buffer of worth. And that's my passion is, can we raise children into adults with just a little bit more self-worth? Let's try to do our best. Because right now, you and I and our generation who grew up in the traditional model are really lacking that inner connection. And we're going to look for it through therapy, through quests, through journeys. But why don't we just do the work at the front end so we can give it to our children a little bit more wholesomely than we got as parents when we were parented?
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you connect parenting to the larger state of the world.
Yeah.
You talk about that in your book and also just in general when you're speaking. I love that. I feel like that's really important too. The parents that I deal with or that I work with, I should say, are parents of boys who are really struggling. And there's sort of this sense of doom, like the world is in this horrible state of being. And oh my gosh, what if my boy grows up to be one of those horrible people doing horrible things? And so I also just bring it down to this, what can we do now? We don't have to be perfect, but like you said, if we can do 10% better, imagine the ripple effect, not just on our kids, on ourselves, but on our communities and the world in general. So I love that.
Right. And also most parents live in this fear-based scarcity mentality. What will happen to my kid? The what if? And in this book, I talk about, no, we are here now. So let's talk about the what is, not the what if, because the what if can drive us crazy. I'm also always battling the, what if my kid doesn't get a job? What if my kid never finds a passion? What if my kid is in a dysfunctional, abusive relationship? Right? We constantly plaguing ourselves in the what if, but the what is right here. And all those problems can still happen. Always, there's a potential, but they will be mitigated. They will be mediated, reduced through our connection. Our connection is a huge buffer against all those horrible things happening. They could still happen, but that's out of your control. What is in your control as a parent is this dynamic, this relationship. And that's what this book focuses on. How can you empower this moment, this isness, this relationship? And there's so much we can do right here, right now.
Love that. Like, we're taking the focus off of how can I prevent anything bad from happening to my child ever, to how can I empower myself and my child to be able to navigate these challenging situations when they come up, because they are going to come up. And of course, you're right. Maybe our child will be in an abusive relationship or not find their passion, or all of those things are perfectly possible, but the connection definitely will mitigate that.
Right. And it's not just loving and kissing and hugging. That's not what I mean by connection. What I mean by the parent-child connection is where the parent comes from such a state of wholeness and presence that they are able to, for the most part, unconditionally accept the essence of their children. When children feel that they are seen, heard, and validated for who they are in their essence, that's what they take out into the world and fly. Not whether they got 100 in calculus, or whether they look pretty, or they're well coordinated in their outfits, or they went to Paris for the summer vacation. What they will take into the world and what will hold stead in times of the dysfunctional relationship or the losing a job is this: I am seen, I am heard, I am valid, my parents honor me, I'm celebrated, I'm good enough. That's what will hold us instead. And that comes from a very specific mindset of the parent. And I talk about that. My whole first section is about changing mindset. The second part is all about breaking our dysfunctional loops and our patterns. And step 3 is all about building connection with our children.
Yeah. So before I get into ask some detailed questions about all this stuff, because I was reading and taking notes, but do you think that's what differentiates conscious parenting from other movements in the peaceful parenting world? Like there are a lot of peaceful parenting movements right now. For those who aren't maybe super familiar with your work, what sets the conscious parenting movement apart?
Well, conscious parenting is really, it includes peaceful parenting, it includes gentle parenting, but it's more than that. It is about breaking down dysfunctional paradigms in your own childhood and in culture. A conscious parent is a warrior. You know, it's not just about how do I talk to my kid or am I using good language? No. This is that plus it's breaking down dysfunctional lies that we've been told, such as I need to be in control, such as I need to raise a happy child, I need to raise a successful child. My daughter should be soft, pretty, and compliant. My son should be aggressive and extroverted. All these lies, my child should be in a relationship, my child should be popular, I should be married. All these are lies that we have been told. So conscious parenting is not only a personal awakening, but it is also a cultural revolution. It's really debunking the old way of looking at the world and setting forth a new way of parenting and living and embodying principles and values that will revolutionize the planet, really.
It's almost about growing ourselves up in addition to
Yes.
helping our children thrive, right?
Yes. And it's not just based on the outcome. Oh, I'm going to raise a polite child, or I'm going to talk in a nice way. It's really about raising children who know who it is they are, who are connected to their inner knowing, who are deeply empowered by their own self-knowledge, and they're not afraid to live from that place of inner awareness and inner guidance.
You know, as I'm listening to you speak, I'm imagining that there are parents out here thinking, I'm not even in that place. And it seems kind of like the parent, at least what I took from the book, is like the premise of the book is really that we're not here to fix our kids, but our kids offer us an opportunity to do our own healing, right? It's not really about fixing them, it's about healing ourselves.
Yes. And then when you correct them, it's coming from a place of non-ego, non-stress, non-anxiety, because your goal is not to fix them.
Right. But how do you sell? This is a hard sell, Dr. Shefali. This is a hard sell, right? What do you say to parents who don't buy it? Like they're adamant about, no, like I'm the parent and I'm going to control the situation and this is what we need to do. How do you respond to a parent like that who comes into your office, let's say?
Yeah, well, if they come into my office, half the battle is won, and I can break down their resistance, but I can't help the parent who denigrates this work without even trying. So all I can say to you is that parent will pay their price when the time comes, because that approach is never sustainable. There will be an emotional price that they pay and their child pays. And it will always come about sooner or later. You may not see it right now because the child may be, quote unquote, the good child who is suppressing their authenticity for the sake of connection, but it will show up at some point or another. That is a guarantee. So the parent has to ask themselves, what do I want more? Do I want my absolute tyranny and dogmatic control in the moment? Or do I want my child to be self-sustaining in the long run? And often it's an either or. It's a philosophical mind shift to decide to raise our children as sovereign beings or as controlled beings. It's as simple as that.
Amazing. Let's focus in on the book. So one of the things you talk about in the book is you help us separate our own fantasy, or as you call it, our own movie of who our child is from the reality of who they really are. Why is that important? I mean, I've just before you answer that question, I was just as I was reading that, I was thinking, I'm not the only one who has fantasies, has my movie about like what my boys are going to grow up to be like, right? I was thinking about a story I have. So my middle one is a very skilled soccer player, and everybody just assumed that he would go to college and play soccer. And a couple of years ago, he decided he didn't want to do that. Right. I mean, to me, that was fine, that I didn't have an issue with it, but parents of other kids on the team, other coaches, his brothers looked at him like, what? Like, all these people in his life have this story for him. And I remember his brother asking, well, like, why are you quitting? You're quitting club soccer. You're just going to play high school soccer. Why? He's like, because I just don't enjoy it anymore. It used to be all I cared about and all I loved. And like, I'm not having fun doing it. So I don't want to spend all my time doing it.
Isn't that amazing? Because he did not get his identity from that, but the world told him that he should get his identity from that. What an amazing thing, because this is where we go wrong as parents. Anytime we see any interest in our child, and heaven forbid if the child shows a talent, right? Even if they don't show a talent, if they just show an interest, we make it a career. We will move states, we will move countries because my kid is interested, because our fantasy, our movie is that, oh my goodness, my kid will win an award one day. Then if the kid is talented, oh, doom to that kid, because now they're supposed to marry that talent and become the best in the world. They can't just have a talent to enjoy for themselves. They can't just relax and just be it. No longer can we have hobbies. No longer can we have, interests. We have to have a career made out of it. And this is our dysfunction and why we're ruining childhood. So kudos to your son, because he was brave enough to say, I am more than this. This is just an aspect of me. Nothing I do is all of me. And I'm going to play and be adventurous and have fun with all my talents. I want to expose myself to more things in life and not just marry one thing so early. Like literally, we make our children have child marriages to their interests and then make them marry that interest for the rest of their lives.
Yep. And it gets worse and worse with each generation. I felt like with my generation, I could start a sport, for example, in high school.
Yeah.
Now,
you can't
start a sport in high school.
You can't. It's too late. I write about taking my eight-year-old for dance lessons, and then she was already too old for everything, so I put her in horse riding and tennis, the two solo things, because everything else they were already professionals in reciting in fancy on fancy stages. Exactly. So we cannot join something now at 12 years old. Are you kidding? We're old. And we need to retire by 12, really. I mean, that's the way childhood is.
So depressing.
Right? But that's why our kids are feeling this pressure to know who it is they are by 20. And my daughter's 20 and she has no idea, because she's not supposed to know right then. They're supposed to go to college to figure it out. Exactly. So we're putting so much pressure on ourselves and our children.
Agreed. So I want to go back to the kind of parent who is going to be listening into this. So my audience is really, like I said, parents of young boys who are really struggling with hard behaviors like aggression, for example. So, in the parenting map, you talk, when you're talking about the book, I've heard you a lot say, this is really the how of conscious parenting. So can you give us a taste of what parents like the parents who are listening to this now are going to learn from reading this book? They've got hard kids. What are a few things that are really going to help them?
So no matter how hard your kid is, there is a superpower there. So I always talk about what is the good part of the hard, right? There's a positive in the hard. I literally think my daughter was also a hard kid, but I don't think you would think that. I think that because she was so against my fantasy, but you may not think that. And the other day I was with her and she was telling her friends, my mom should be so grateful. I was such an easy kid. And I almost like choked on my saliva. But I thought it was so amazing, because she's right. The child was probably an easy kid if that kid was with another parent. I was the one who made her feel like she was hard in my imagination. What if she was an easy kid with another kind of parent, right? So I always say, what if your child was a different kind of child with another parent? Watch how you are creating your life experience with this child. And it's 99% because the child does not meet your fantasy. So say you have, with all objectivity, the hardest kid in the world. You're going to make that experience harder by not finding the superpower, by not finding the beauty, by not finding the strength. So when my daughter used to be what I called obstinate or defiant, or oh, so difficult, why can't she just listen? As long as I had that attitude, I made it worse. I did not like her. I did not like it. I did not like myself. I wanted to run away. But the moment I changed it to, wow, she really knows what she wants. She really can step up to the plate. She can really own her feelings. She can really tell me to back off. Then I began admiring her. And then I began learning from her. Because she, typically what we see in our children and don't like are parts of ourselves that we did not allow, that were put down, that were suppressed. Okay, so let's go to another place. What if your child is really, really hard, right? Like, no, really hard. Every one of our friends will say, this child is hard. So now what do? We need to understand why they have adopted this kind of personality. One part of it is pure temperament. They came like this. But another part is now maybe it's their egoic defense. So there are 3 reasons that I outline in this book why our children, quote unquote, misbehave. Number 1, lack of skill. They just don't have the brain power yet to regulate their emotions, to delay gratification, to calm it down, to take a pause. Boys are even behind the curve than girls on that. Their brain develops even slower in those areas. While they are more muscular, more coordinated, more movement-oriented, emotionally, they lag in those skills. So they don't have the skills. I can have compassion for that. They don't have the life experience. They don't have practice. And number 3 is they may not have the worth, which has to do with your connection. The more you judge a kid or child as difficult, the more they will become difficult. They will literally become what you are judging them as. So watch your judgment, watch your part in the co-creation, understand the why. It's lack of skill, lack of experience, lack of worth. And always try to find the superpower, because there is always a superpower.
So how, of those 3 reasons, like how do we figure out which it is? And then when we know it, what do we do with that information? I mean, let's say I have a 5-year-old and he can't be left alone with his 2-year-old sister because when I leave him alone with her, he pushes her over or takes a toy and knocks it on her head, right, or something like that. How do I feel? Is it A, B, or C? I find parents go to lack of information, right? And then they start talking to the child about how they know better and they shouldn't be doing this and why are they hitting their sister and stuff like that. I find that to be sort of not generally what's going on in the kids that I'm supporting. But how do you figure that? How do you figure out then, is it lack of skill or is it a lack of self-worth? And what do we do with that information once we have it?
Yeah, I don't even talk about lack of information. I talk about lack of skill, which is brain development, lack of experience, which is their time on earth, lack of worth, which is your connection to them. So it's always some of this combination. You do not need to find out. You just need to know that these are the 3 reasons. These are the 3 reasons, period. So if your 5-year-old is hitting their sibling, it's because they are up-leveled, uprooted from their throne. They have been discharged from the primary place and they're feeling threatened. That is the lack of worth. The lack of skill is that they don't know how to regulate their emotions. Hitting is the way of protesting. It's so easy. It's nonverbal, it's quick, they don't have to process, they can just react. Those age groups are notorious for hitting, spitting, kicking, biting. It's very primal. It just shows that the brain is not yet developed to regulate. So if you add on to that with your reactivity, you have now created an explosion. You have to gently take the child in your hands and contain them or separate them and soothe them and go and give words. You don't have to ask them any questions. Just give words. Stephen is really upset, isn't he? Stephen is mad that Isabella came into the room and was breathing, right? Right. I got you. I understand you. Come, let's do it another way. Let's practice nice touch. Let's practice. Let's practice. And we do it with such calm because we know that our child is fundamentally, quote unquote, good. They are only acting, quote unquote, bad because of something inside that is misaligned. And if we can just stay in a non-judgmental, unconditionally accepting place, those behaviors will fade. So we have to think, okay, I want my son to be a great brother. Okay, so keep saying, Stephen is such a great brother. Stephen really loves Isabella. Stephen is hurt, but he loves Isabella. And you keep reinforcing the times that he is amazing with Isabella. But the moment you put Stephen in a negative role, you have now created more animosity towards the younger, and you've created more shame, which will lead to more blame, more acting out, and it's never a good cycle.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel? What do you feel is the reason?
You're asking me?
Yeah. What if, in your work with children in something like this, what would you say is the main reason?
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually don't, what I tend to tell parents is that I don't feel like it's important to focus on the reason unless there's an something external that we can pinpoint, like if a behavior changes suddenly, for example.
Right.
Is a child being bullied at school? Was there a move or divorce, a death, big things that can happen in a child's family that would be a clear why. And if there's something that we need to do something about, then I say focus on the why. Like if I have a family I'm working with now, and they ended up pulling their child out of school because he was being physically, hit and hurt by other kids, and the school wasn't taking a role in preventing that from happening, so they had to remove him. But most of the time, like barring things like that, I just say, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the why. Let's just focus on the healing. And then I guide them to protect themselves, and to mostly listen, to stay and listen. And in my book, we talk about a tool called stay listening, where we're really just like you said, remaining loving, not saying much at all, but allowing space for really like the somatic healing to happen, right? For the child to have their experiences so that they're really healing the hurt that's underlying the behaviors. They're healing what's
100%.
Driving the behaviors, because otherwise we're just putting band-aids on all the time, and then again and again we see the same behaviors.
Right. And when I say that it occurs for these three reasons, but you don't need to question, it is for one of these reasons. So just take it from there and have compassion. And
it's not about figuring out which of those reasons. It's just acknowledging that it's just one of these things.
It's
just
one of
these things.
That's it. So have plenty of compassion.
Yeah.
And later on you can teach them nice touch and practice and be loving. But if you just see your children as struggling instead of being defiant, it will change everything. My child is struggling versus my child is defiant. One is the defiance implies that they're intentionally causing trouble, that there's some intentionality, some purpose. And our children don't have such deep thoughts. They're just reactive in the moment to whoever's in their way, or if they're hungry or they're tired. So have that initial muscle be built. My kid is struggling. My kid is struggling. Even though it looks like something vengeful, that's just the only way they know how to tell you, I'm in pain. I'm not happy. Help me.
Yeah. You talk about in the book, you say that kids that we call bad, they might actually be good because they hold the potential to awaken us. What? Could you talk a little bit about that? How is my bad kid good?
Yeah, I love the kids who the parents say, oh, this kid is driving me crazy. Yeah, because you're full of control and you're full of rigidity, and that's why this kid is driving you crazy. And when a parent says, oh, my child is so good, she and I are one, I shudder, I cringe, because I cannot imagine what's happening to that child, because some children come with a more easygoing temperament and quote unquote then become the good kid. But they're not good for our ego, because for our soul's awakening, because they're just being good for our ego. They're complying so much that they're not making us question anything. Sorry.
Bless you.
But when you have a kid who's pushing against the limits and questioning and not listening to you, now you are forced to awaken to question yourself. Maybe it's me who's coming across in such a negative way. Maybe it's my energy. So that quote unquote bad kid allows the parent to begin to question themselves. Otherwise, the good kid will never do that. It's only the bad kid, quote unquote, who makes the parent so uncomfortable that they may question themselves. But the instinct of the parent of a quote unquote bad kid is to punish them, to yell at them, to squash them. And that is such a tragedy, because that kid is going to wake you up to question, what is it about me that is creating this reaction all the time? Why does my kid look at me like I'm a monster? Maybe I am acting monstrously. Let me look at that.
Yeah. I wonder if you see this as a pattern that I see in the families that I work with. They'll have, one kid who is really struggling and the behaviors are spilling out all over the place, right? And he'll be called the bad kid.
Right.
And then, the perfect kid. And what I see happen is that once parents start implementing the types of strategies that you're teaching about in your book here, the one who's been challenged, that relationship improves with the parent, his or her behaviors improve, and then suddenly the good kid starts making noise. Beep, beep. We sort of...
That is so amazing, right? When that happens.
Yeah.
The reason for that is that the good kid was suppressing.
Right.
No kid is a sheep. If you have a sheep, be very scared, because the sheep will come out of its clothing, and you do not want to raise a sheep. You do not want that. It is coming at a high price. There will be either depression, withdrawal, suppression, self-hatred on the inside of the kid, or big time explosion, acting out, dropping out of school, rebelling, because you cannot, walk all over a kid. You cannot just steamroll over a sovereign spirit. And so when that bad kid, gets to express themselves and the parent begins to work with that kid with compassion, then the good child begins to say, okay, now it's my turn. But till they don't feel safe, they will not come out. So the good child is a scared child. Mm-hmm. And so they're waiting for safety before they can show up in their glory, so to speak.
Thanks for talking about that a little bit, because I think parents get really confused when that happens and worried.
Yes.
I feel more worried when they're quiet.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. If a teenager or a toddler is not acting out, there's a problem. Yes. Because they are being suppressed. They have already become too scared, and that is never a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a question about being in control versus being in charge. You talk about this in your book. I found it so fascinating. I never heard anybody talk about it quite the way that you do. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between being in control and being in charge, and what we can do to kind of internalize the difference and change our behaviors?
So our instinct as unconscious parents is to control our children's behaviors, moods, feelings, destiny, career choice, everything. That will always backfire eventually, because no one likes to be controlled. So it's like telling your kid, don't eat that, put that there, don't do this, don't do that, versus being in charge of the environment. So if you don't want them to eat those foods, don't order the foods home. At least till the age of 10, you have that influence. Mm-hmm. If you don't want them to be on the iPad and it's causing you fights all the time, instead of every day having the same fight, get off the iPad, right? We're saying the same thing every day. Take the Wi-Fi out of the house. The child won't know that you are doing that. You can create that and say, sorry, no Wi-Fi. Nobody has Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. And just make a policy. Or if you want your child to go to bed, instead of saying, go to bed, shut down all the lights, put out all the music, and everybody go to bed. Eventually, your child will come to bed. So instead of looking to micromanage the minutiae and the details, and the person, create the environment that you want. But that will take effort from everybody, right? Everybody will have to eat healthy food. Everybody will have to put their phones away at the dining table. Mm-hmm. And maybe mom and dad will have to go to bed. And it doesn't mean that all the siblings go to bed. And it doesn't mean you'll have to do this forever, but it's the way to set the precedence, right? Instead of nitpicking on little micro details, focus on the macro, and that's where you get to be in charge of the conditions versus controlling individual behaviors all the time. Everybody can come home, we all eat together, we all kind of go do our homework and our work, then we all gather around to go for showers, right? It's like a rhythm that the whole house follows versus one child being told what to do against the stream.
Yeah, it's almost proactive versus reactive.
Yes.
Like you've thought about what your values are, what you want to teach your children, what kind of environment you want in your household versus you're reacting to whatever the crisis of the moment is.
Right. And this means we have to all be consistent, right? It's kind of the same schedule. And then that becomes the flow. And the schedule is quote unquote the bad guy, not the parent. You go, well, that's what we decided. That's on the schedule. Look at the schedule. What does the schedule say? Right.
Boy, that's hard for me. I hate schedules, Dr. Shefali.
Right. But you can't have 1 million things on the schedule. You have like 4 things on the schedule. Yeah. We come home, we shower, maybe we do something fun. We do finish the homework, we go to bed. I mean, there can't be a million things on the schedule. I hate schedules too. But I just have, what I mean by schedule is just whatever's consistently happening week after week. We kind of follow the same rhythm, right? Call it rhythm. And rhythms are not about the moment by moment. It's not like exactly at 7:45. It's just like, this is what we do. And then this is what we do. And it just follows this flow versus this micromanagement of the individual behaviors exactly at a rigid time. I hate rigid times myself, but it's just flow. After lunch is bedtime, nap time, after nap time is showers, like that, just the big chunks of activity.
Understood. Okay, I've got more questions about your book. Can I keep asking you?
Yes.
Okay, so there are lots of examples in this book, including examples of Maya, your daughter, right, quitting things like piano or horseback riding or whatever. And you suggest asking the question, does this choice allow my child to be liberated or encaged, right? And so my question is this, what happens when there's fear? Because when there's fear, like quitting might feel liberating because it liberates the child from the fear, right? They don't feel scared anymore. But when, I think from my perspective, I feel like it's kind of encaging because it's encaging them in their own fear. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So if a child is afraid to the point of where it's now become crippling, to push them into that is going to be counterproductive, right? So suppose the teacher has put so much fear in the child, that now they do not want to play drums anymore. We need to give them space from that. It's okay. They may come back to it if they are, again, connected to it. We don't realize how much of our children's love for things comes from the teacher, right? A teacher can make or break a child's love for things. So I remember my daughter loved dancing till the teacher changed. The moment the teacher changed and they didn't vibe, she didn't go anymore. And I saw that I couldn't push her. I tried to change, the teacher changed, the hour changed, but then she had had enough. So I think you have to know your children well, to know when this is going to be a choice that is actually coming from their deep knowing versus the child is just not wanting to even try to be uncomfortable. And we have to gauge, if this is about just not being comfortable and they need a little bit more practice at it, then we can keep inching them forward. Okay, let's just try it for 4 more times or just till the end of the month. Okay. But if we feel like it's like a no, and the child is so certain, let me tell you, honoring them in that moment will be a very empowering thing. If the child is vociferous and clear, and you test it over a few weeks, right? And the child persists, honoring them will hold them in better stead than forcing them to go against their inner knowing, because they need to know that their voice matters and that they have a say in things. Now, I'm not saying that the moment they say no, you should just give up, but you get to know your kid and be attuned to them and test it. And if after 3-4 weeks, they're still going, no, mom, I don't want it anymore, then they need to be honored. I used to play the piano and I did not enjoy it with this particular teacher. I begged my parents week after week and they did not let me stop. And let me tell you, I dreaded it. I did not put my heart in it. And half the piano lesson, I went to the bathroom because I did not like it. So what was the point? It was a waste of their money, waste of my time. And I doubted myself every time. I felt like the bad one. But I was right. I did not enjoy her, now, if they had just listened to me, we could have saved money, saved time, saved energy, and I could have gone to another teacher who could have been better for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think there's situations like that. And then there's situations like I remember when my oldest was little and he was obsessed with baseball like his entire life and always wanted to play. And we were in a situation where he had asked me, he was little, like 5 or 6 or 7 or something, to try out for Little League, right, for baseball. And I signed him up for the tryouts. Tryouts just meant they decided what team you were going to be on, right? So all the teams could be even, so the kids could have fun playing. Sure. Nobody was going to get cut from the team or anything. But come the week before, when I said, hey, you have tryouts next week, all of a sudden all the fear bubbled up inside him. You're making me do this. I didn't even want to do this. Why did you sign me up? And so to me, I was like, whoa, there's something misaligned here, because there's something that this kid is passionate about. He asked me to do this, and now all of a sudden he doesn't want to go. He won't go. What did I do? I'm the bad person. And that to me was a sign that, okay, there's some fear. So I needed to figure out how to push him.
But you're talking about somebody who's not even tried. So that's where we have to push through their fear. I remember my daughter was 3 years old. She was loving the carousels, but when it was her turn to go, she did not want to go. Mm-hmm. That's what you're talking about. Like, we're not even going to dip our feet in the water because we're terrified. Yes. In those cases, with love, with patience, with creativity, we help them push through. Mm-hmm. It's like jumping off the diving board. It's learning how to swim. We need to work with their fears to push through, because they need to try out new things. However, I'm talking about when they have tried out things and they have done it, and then they make a decision, no more. Yeah. Like your middle kid. Yeah. Then we need to honor them. Yeah. Right. Okay. So it's different scenarios.
Understood. Okay, so we haven't talked very much about ego, yet you talk about ego all the time, all through this book. So can you talk a little bit about the 5 F's, ego, knowing our ego mask? How does that help us become a more conscious parent? Tell us a little bit. What do you want to know? What do you want us to know? What do you want parents to know?
Sure. I've really laid it out in depth so they can read the book. But what I'll say just quickly about it, in the entire stage 2, it's about breaking our ego patterns. And I talk about the 5 ego patterns that we parents can develop. So if we're ruled by anger, we're going to be fighter parents. If we're ruled by anxiety, fixer parents. If we're ruled by attention seeking, what I call feigner, they feign, the fake parent. Mm-hmm. If they're ruled by avoidance, it'll be the freezer. And if they're ruled by abandonment, it'll be the fleer. So the 5 A's and the 5 F's. And we as parents need to become aware of our patterns. And then under these are subtypes. So we can identify exactly what we get into when we're triggered. And then I talk about how to break the loop. And I talk about the inner child, the insightful self. This section 2 is like doing a mini therapy workshop with me. So that's the most profound part of this book, I think.
Yeah. I think, and one of the things that I love that you said in there was you were talking about triggers, and you were saying that, triggers are essentially neutral, right? That what makes something a trigger isn't the thing, isn't that, I don't know.
Person, place, or thing. It's not the person, place, or thing.
Right. It's how, go ahead. I'll let you talk.
It's how it hits us inside.
Yeah.
Take something simple like, I'm relaxed right now, so both of us are just having a lovely conversation. But what if just before I came here, I stubbed my toe, there was a leak in my terrace, and the garbage was stinking up the house? I would not be this relaxed, right? But so then this would be a trigger. You would be triggering me right now. I'd be like, how can you? Why isn't you hurrying up? This could become a trigger. But this is not a trigger because I'm calm. But if I had 10 things happen to me before I came here, you would be triggering me right now. And I'd be removing my crap on you. And you'd be like, what's going on with her? So this is the same with our children. Our children are always like, what's going on with mom? I don't know whether your children have ever told you, but my daughter many times would tell me, whoa, why are you in such a bad mood? And I wouldn't even know I was in a bad mood, but I was just looking so stressed. And they see that. And they're like, what's going on with you? And what's going on with us is that we have so many things that are overwhelming us that we're not aware of. And then when it comes time to put our children to bed at night, we are losing our shit because all day we have been out of touch with how stressed we are, and we haven't taken care of ourselves.
Oh, that's number one. That's what I talk to parents about. Number one is like, you have to come first. We have to put ourselves first, because if we don't, we could read your whole entire book and not be able to implement any of it.
Right. Well, reading this book is you putting yourself first and saying, you know what? I'm taking a time out from parenting and I'm going to go take care of myself. This book is that gift to you, because I give you so many ways of talking, thinking, being, and feeling. It will just clear up so much confusion. I make it simple. I liberate you from so much unnecessary pressure, and I allow you to be empowered, and I give you permission.
I love that. I just have a couple more questions for you.
Yes.
One is that I have to say the section on punishment was one of my favorite parts of the book, because I don't think I've heard anybody kind of just rail on punishment the way you just did. I found myself going, yeah, say it again, say it louder.
I have such a thing against punishment. Yeah.
So what were you thinking? What were you feeling as you were writing that section?
All the times I was punished as a child, and it was so ridiculous. I don't even remember why I was punished. I just remember one teacher slapped me. I still can feel the ringing in my ears. I literally don't know why she slapped me. It must have been because I was laughing or talking, or, I mean, what insanity. What will punishment teach our children? Nothing, because they're not doing the negative behavior because they're bad. Again, they're doing the negative behavior because they don't know how, they have not had enough practice, or they're feeling terrible about themselves. So how can you punish them for feeling that way? Yeah. So it's just inhumane. It's lazy. It's cruel. I have a reaction against it, because that means the parent isn't doing their work, isn't finding a way to connect to their children, and we're leaving a legacy of abuse within our children's footprint, and then they will be abusive when they feel the need to be abusive, and that's not allowed. It's not okay.
Yeah, this book really, I think, is going to be helpful for a lot of parents in terms of breaking that cycle of abuse, the generational cycle.
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
So is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to share with my audience today?
Well, just that you've done such a great job at breaking it down that I'm afraid now they're not going to get the book. So I'm living in fear. So that's not okay. So I'm in abundance.
Don't worry.
I'm in abundance. Go buy the book, because I'm going to create lack in them and say there's so much more in the book, but there is so much more in the book. There's so many exercises and activities. I'm so proud of these humans in your community who listen to you, because you are cutting edge. You are so amazing. And I'm just proud of you. Tosha and I did a summit together. If people want to get it, it's summit.drshefali.com. And Tosha and I do a whole talk on aggression in boys. And you can get the lifetime recordings. You just need to buy 2 copies of the book, and you'll get all 30 lectures for free if you get the 2 recordings. If you get
That's what I did.
That's what you did. And it's a bonus free workshop thrown in there as well. So lots of stuff. Go to summit.drshefali.com and grab a copy of this book. Do it, make study groups, do book clubs on it, because this will help all of us be more empowered in this crazy journey that we call parenting.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I have so much admiration for you, and I'm so grateful that you are focusing now on how we heal ourselves, how we parents heal ourselves. I just think it's the key to creating a more peaceful world, which is my goal.
Yes, you're
we
doing
start
an
in our
awesome
families.
job. What an awesome job you are doing. I'm grateful to you. Thank you for supporting me. And thank you to all of you who have heard this. Go to summit.drshefali.com. If you're going to buy the book, you might as well buy 2 and get the whole summit for life.
Yep, and give one to somebody. That's what I'm doing. And I'll put the link in as well, so it'll be obvious where to go.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tosha. Bye.